This week on the Shred School, we are going to learn the Casper. Can't wait to show this one to you. Welcome back to the Shred School, a course where I teach the first 12 tricks I believe you should learn on a skateboard. And today we are going to do the Casper, which is a trick that got me into skateboarding. In Tony Hawk 2, there is a ending video where Rodney Mullen does a manual, except the board is upside down. And it just blew my mind when I saw that happen, because it's not something you can do in the game. And I just realized you can do anything you want on a skateboard. If you want to flip it down and hold it upside down and do all kinds of stuff with it, you can. And I was so impressed by that is why I ended up getting my first skateboard. And so this is a trick that I am going to show you how to do today. To learn the Casper, it's going to be helpful if you can do a heel side rail stand, the one where you push down on the board and pull it like that. It'll also help to do a kickflip. I'm going to show you two different ways to get into the Casper, so hopefully we can find one of those that works. So there are two ways to do a Casper. In fact, there's like hundreds of ways to do a Casper, but there are going to be two ways I'm going to teach today. One is the classic version and one is the kickflip style. And then there's going to be two different ways to land it as well. The classic way, I think, it's better in certain circumstances. The foot position is crazy, so it's tougher to do in like a street type of way, but it's more fun on flat to me. The kickflip way is fine, and it's more street compatible. If you were ever going to do a Casper on a bank or something like that, you're more likely to do it the kickflip way. But let's start with the classic style. So the foot position is a lot like it is if you're going to get onto the heel side, which is by putting your front foot about like this. You want it to be close to the front bolt. It's not as important with this trick because you don't have to step up onto the edge here. You could have it down here if you want. Back foot about like that. So toes mostly hanging off. And you're on the tail, what's going to happen, the board is going to flip over and you're going to want to land that foot right on the tail. So you want it to be in a stable spot so you're prepared to do that. You don't want it to be on the edge. You want it to be like before, like right after these bolts, about right here. And it helps also to roll fakie for this one, because when you land in the Casper, if you're going this way, you would land and your speed will help you pull that nose up in the air. A Casper, your front foot should not touch the ground. Your back foot shouldn't either, technically. Although if your shoe brushes slightly against it, it's fine, especially on a street board. The tails are steeper, and it's very common for your foot to just kind of slip down and touch slightly. As long as you're not putting weight on it, that's fine. All right, so have your feet in that position. You are going backwards, not by much. This isn't a speed trick. You just want to get a little bit going. That'll help. All right. So you got your feet here, got your weight on this front foot because you're about to tip the board over. And as you start to flip it, you want to shift your weight to your back foot. All right, the board is, and hop backwards, because the flip is not happening in the air. You're not going to pop and flip the board over. So it's going to roll backwards. You know, it's going to travel about that far backwards. So you start to flip the board over, push it forward so your weight goes back, and jump this way. And hopefully this foot is going to wrap. The board's going to start to flip, and this foot is going to wrap around, land on the tail, and you can catch it like this. Now there's two different ways to land once you get in this position, in the Casper position. I'm going to tell you about those in a second, but first, like, if you are flipping over the board and you land and your front foot is on the ground, that's okay at first. That's not a Casper, that's not technically the completed trick, but it's okay as a stepping stool. Just don't get too comfortable with that. The problem I see some people have, and the reason why I don't want you to do this unless you absolutely have to, is I see some people do this trick where their back foot is kind of just like, they pull it up, this foot flips, and then the board lands like this, and then this foot comes back down. You can't do it like that because there's no way to adjust that. Your back foot needs to be on the board at the same time your front foot starts to pull up on it. So it's a tighter timing type of thing. But if you can get there, there's two ways to land. And I think it's a great idea to learn both, because you can get in Caspers in all kinds of different ways. If you land and your feet are kind of off, maybe this way will work a little bit simpler than that way. So there's two ways. For me, the simpler and the easier way that you don't see too often is to just tip the board like straight half flip, like that. It's all in your front foot. What you start to do is your weight is back, right? But you start to land, so you start to lean back, and then jump. And as you jump, you pull up that foot, it flips over, you land. You can't do it with your weight all the way back. That's not going to work so well. If your weight is all the way back, though, you can do a shove it out, which is a pretty cool thing to do, because the board is going to do not just a spin, but it's going to flip over halfway, and it's going to stick to your front foot the whole way. So what you do, you jump up, you pull your front foot in and your back foot in, and you kind of touch them almost. So you kind of do this, and then this foot is going to stick to the board. Your back foot, you need to jump up and pull up, and you got to let that board come around and then bring that back foot down on it. So you kind of cross your feet almost and then pull that foot up over. It's like a little hopscotch move where you start the board spinning and then you got to jump over it and land back on it. That's the most common way to land it. You see that all the time. That's like the most basic version of a Casper. To me, it's a little bit tougher, but it is important to learn both. All right, now the kickflip version of the Casper, you may find easier because that way is a little bit weird, but I think it might be easier to learn because your kickflips are still pretty fresh. And so doing, different types of kickflips might get a little bit confusing. So I hope that one of these works. I think the classic way might be a little bit better, but I'll teach you both just in case one works. All right. So the foot position is a little bit different from a kickflip, not much. I tend to put my foot more toward the nose. It's about here. It's not too different, but my back foot is not on the tip. I'm not trying to really pop it and get way up in the air. It's more like this, a little bit more stable, a little bit more, with the board, because your back foot, you don't want it to go too far. If you check out this clip, you see how my back foot, it just barely clears the tail and then gets right back on it. So your back foot is going to want to pop the board a little bit, but you're not trying to go for height here. Now the flick is a little bit different as well. Normally with a kickflip, when the board pops, you're flicking up this way. Your flick should not end lower than it started. You started about here, then you flick it and your foot's up here, right? That's kind of how you pull the board up in the air. But you're not doing that right now. Again, you're not going for height. You pop the board and you want to flick down. Now it's not so much a flick and then a catch. If you watch close, it's kind of like the board starts to tip over and then you pull your foot back and catch it. So it feels a bit different. You pop and kind of flick down through the board and catch it quick. And then your back foot, again, it pops, just kind of stays close. Don't pull it up to your chest or anything. Just keep it close. And then when it starts to tip over, bring it back down and catch that Casper. So again, hopefully your front foot is off the ground and your back foot is nice and stable, like up, right up against the truck is where you want your back foot to be, if at all possible. You land that. And then depending on what's comfortable and where your balance is and all that, you can either do that straight flip or the shove it out. So there are a few things that can go wrong with learning the Casper. The first is the balance. And for me, I think just getting into the classic style Casper can be pretty tough because it's not necessarily the technique that's tough, it's the transfer to the back foot. You're starting more with your weight on your front foot because you got to get that board flipping, but then as you land in it, your weight is mostly on the back foot. And so that's why I suggested going backwards. But if you're going to roll backwards, it might just be awkward to try to get your feet in position and you're rolling and the board wants to turn. You don't have to go backwards. You have two options. You can do it going forwards, which is a lot harder, although I did one just to show that it could be done. The big difference is you just want to push that board way out ahead. You speed it up a lot as you start the flip over. Or you could do it off the nose and do a nose Casper. I only have one clip of this one, and it's old and it's not that great because this was not one that was super comfortable for me, but it works for some. And so the difference is you're doing it with the feet backwards. You're doing the opposite foot to do the same thing, but you get to roll forwards, and so you get all of the pros of, you know, landing on the nose and being able to pull up the tail that way. And the only difficulty is that your feet are doing the opposite thing. Since you're learning this trick for the first time, it's not like your feet are used to doing this and you've got to relearn it. If you're going to learn it for the first time, you could try doing it off the nose. The other issue, of course, is the front foot touching. And this is a big issue with the trick. If you try to post a video of a Casper and your foot touches, you're not going to get any respect for that. I used to think I was amazing at Caspers because I could do a 360 flip. You know, I could do anything out of a Casper. It was no problem. I could, but my front foot was always touching. Or I would do an actual Casper. I would hold it, and then I would touch it, kind of, you know, reset my feet, and then I would do a 360 flip or something like that. But when your foot touches, it makes it a different trick. You're not really doing a Casper at that point. So it's very important to work on that. If you have to do it in stages, that's okay. But I would do my best, if I were you, to get out of that habit of having that front foot touch as quickly as possible. If you want to advance with the Caspers, there is a ton of different things that you can do. There's a whole world of tricks that you can do with Caspers. If you learned it the classic style, going fakie, to do it with a half cab is really not a big change. You just kind of, you know, work them shoulders, get going. You can get in that Casper and it'll pivot, and then you can do the normal shove it. I have a clip here with a 360 shove it that I did, which felt pretty cool. So that is a good option. You can do Casper to rail, you can do rail to Casper, you can do a Casper flip to Casper, Casper varial flip, Casper 360 flips. There is a million different things that can be done with Caspers, either to or from them, and that is one thing that I love so much about freestyle. There's endless possibilities. My tip of the week is don't get obsessed with filming, which is something that I used to do. I would really want to film this line or this trick, and I would spend so much time doing it and getting frustrated. I'd finally get it and the clip's not that good. You know, my toe touched or something and I couldn't tell in the moment, and I've got to refilm it. And one thing I want you to keep in mind is that skateboarding is not your job. If you're not having fun, then you could set that aside and do something else. It is a lot of fun to have footage, you know, after a session, to come home and watch all the stuff that you did. That is really cool. But if you're getting obsessed with filming, it could get in the way of just enjoying skateboarding and just going out and having a good time. Your homework this week is to do some nose slides, because we're going to be doing a grind next week. And just to get back in the feel of committing to a slide and just getting comfortable on that curb a bit more is going to help. So I would definitely suggest doing that this week. And also, when you get your Caspers, make sure you post them on Instagram with the hashtag ShredSchool101. I'm going to go through all of those at the end of the course and pick one winner, my favorite person to submit all of these tricks, and I will give you a prize pack from Quasi. And also, if you need a little bit more help with this Casper, go to radratvideo.com and see the written walkthrough on there. Next week, we're going to learn the 50-50 grind, our first grind trick for the course, and I think the perfect way to end off this series by giving you a new category of trick to learn. I'm very excited to see you next week.